we want to talk about the police service, which was transformed from the police force but into the Constitution. It wasn't that just, people just, no. The Constitution basically transformed this and called it the police service and established various institutions and said we're going to have police reforms. And among the first things that we want to do is establish the National Police Service Commission so that the work of the police is managed under one proper commission. And the first order of business when the commission comes into being is to review all police officers who are working in the police service and weed out the bad apples. And then we shall be left with good officers who will now be called the Kenya Police Service. And those will be the ones who are implementing the reforms that we're talking about. How many years later? We're where we are. We still have conversations about police. Are police doing a good job? Do people have higher trust in police today than they did 11 years ago? What's happening? To join us in that conversation is Peter Kiama. He's the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. Peter, very good morning and welcome to the Situation Room.
Good morning to you and thanks for having me.
We call that seat on the other side the hot seat.
Yes.
But this morning we've moved it to you.
Okay.
So that, we warm it up a little bit and we have this warm conversation.
All right.
As we start here, what is the Independent Medical Legal Unit? What do you do?
The Independent Medical Legal Unit is an NGO started in this country in 1983 at a time when the country was facing very undemocratic governance processes and practices and a lot of repression. And so the institution was a response to state repression in the early 90s by volunteers who came up and said, enough is enough. We need to respond. We need to work with victims. We need to raise the voice of victims and families at that time. And since then, we have focused on prevention and response to torture and other forms of ill treatment, including violence by state institutions like the police. So we do support victims through medical treatment, through forensic medical investigations, carrying out post-mortem examinations of people who have died in custody, people who have been executed, people who have have suffered enforced disappearances. We investigate that, and if their bodies are found, we help to document the evidence. We also provide psychosocial support to victims of torture and other forms of violence, as well as legal support. We go to court for compensation, but we also do criminal defense of victims of police violence who are then again charged, wrongfully. So we defend them when we find that they've been wrongfully charged. In addition to that, we have invested a lot in the last 10 years since we got the Constitution of Kenya 2010 in supporting reforms within the National Police Service. We have trained hundreds of police officers across the country, at county level, at police station level, at national level as well, at command level. We have also worked very closely with the National Police Service in implementing community policing, because the foundation of the new National Police Service, as envisaged in the Constitution, was community policing. That was supposed to be the game changer. That each and every police station, the over 1,400 police stations across the country, should have a functioning community policing unit, mainly populated by citizens in their own locality, together with members of the national government administration, as well as police officers.
Okay, so Peter, how was that envisioned to work out? Because, we hear it a lot. It sounds very hoity-toity that there's community policing, and it sounds nice. How was it envisioned to work? That we would say that there would be a community policing unit that was, made up of citizens, people from the community. What is it supposed to do? That I would go to Peter in my neighborhood and say, look, this and this is what is going on. And then Peter then is tasked with the responsibility to take it to the police? Or that we actually have a human sitting in a police post saying that, these are my reports, then deal with it. How exactly was that supposed to work?
It was very simple. The Constitution gives that responsibility of establishing community policing committees as well as practices to the Inspector General of Police. So the buck stops at the IG's office, where the Inspector General is supposed to provide guidelines and then provide a budget for every police station across the country. Every ward commander, formerly called OCS, is supposed to have a budget to implement community policing. That is where the responsibility lies. So the Inspector General has already issued the guidelines in 2017. The guidelines are there. However, majority of police stations do not have community policing committee, functioning community policing committees. And so there is a failure at that level, at the IG's office, the failure to ensure that each and every police station commander has established a functional community policing unit. That community policing unit is supposed to comprise of women, youth, and I underline youth because youth are at the receiving end of police violence. And so the community policing was supposed to bring youth closer to the police, supposed to bring women closer to the police, was supposed to bring business people, borders, market traders, religious people, all manner of all shades of opinion was supposed to be represented within the community policing committee. And together, the community policing committee is not the command structure. The community policing committee is supposed to be the place for dialogue between the police and the community, identifying their safety and security challenges and looking for creative and innovative solutions. And therefore, each and every community policing committee is supposed to operate in their own manner using the guidelines based on their security and safety challenges in the locality. That was the way it's supposed to be. So it was a place for dialogue. And we still believe that that's the future of the National Police Service if we want a service, not a force.
Is this anchored in law? Is it a policy? Or is it just a wish of the National Police Service Commission?
It's not a wish. It's not a privilege. It's not an option. It is mandated by the Constitution. It's a constitutional responsibility. Article 244E of the National Police Service obligates the Inspector General to lead the service, to foster relationships with the wider society. And how does he or she do that? The Inspector General is supposed to do that by establishing those functional community policing committees in each police station and also community policing forums at patrol base or lower levels of the police structure. So at every level, there's supposed to be a committee or a forum that helps the police to engage with the community.
And how does that relate?
And in addition to that, then provide a budget every year. Unfortunately, there's literally no money that goes to the police station that's supposed to help in funding community policing work. We have a budget every year of 16 million Kenya shillings for over 1,000 police stations across the country. Not a single cent
16 million per
goes
station.
to police stations.
16 million shillings per station or
Per
16
year,
million
nationally,
shillings
per
for
year.
all the stations
For
in the
all
country?
the stations across the country.
Wait,
For all the stations.
16 million in total or 16 million per station?
In total, in the national police budget. And that's a tragedy. You
Only
begin to
16
see-
million shillings
Only.
to fund
Only.
1,400 police stations.
Yeah. And if you trace that back to the police stations, you won't find it.
What is it supposed to do?
So the problem begins there.
Yeah.
That you need adequate funding. If you have to transform the National Police Service from a force to a service, then you have to fund that process. You need to fund it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even as we recognize that the police budget has increased over the years in the last 10 years, and that there are results that can be seen in terms of better equipment. You see there are more police vehicles available
Yeah.
for patrol and other duties.
That's true.
And that's a plus. But that is not commensurate when it comes to community policing. The soft, what we call the soft side of policing. So in terms of equipment, tools, kitting, you find we have invested a lot in that, and that's a plus. We don't begrudge the police for that.
Sure.
But we need to deal with the soft side of reforms.
Okay.
The attitudes, the relationships, the problem-solving skills of police officers. That if a police officer goes to a particular situation like you saw in Embu the other day, you do not go there where there's a procession, people are angry, and you escalate the situation. The legal requirement, the constitutional requirement, the requirement under the police service standing orders is you de-escalate the situation. You use your problem-solving skills to de-escalate the situation. You don't add more fire to already, a very
tense
situation.
Environment.
Yeah.
But I'm a bit confused here between the community policing initiative and the Nyumba Kumi initiative. Are we speaking of the same thing, or are we speaking of two different things?
Initially, there was a problem. There was confusion. In that, remember Nyumba Kumi came out of Westgate.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a presidential pronouncement.
Right.
With no legal basis and no policy basis. It was a good initiative. But then when it came in, it found community policing already embedded in the law and in the constitution. So instead of using the law that was already there to ensure that we establish those committees on the ground, then we ended up having two parallel systems, one being implemented under the Inspector General and one being implemented under the Office of the President through the National Government Administration. However, we need to give credit to the immediate former Inspector General of Police, Mr. Boynet, because he proceeded to provide guidelines, in the first edition of Community Policing Guidelines 2016, and again revised under the current Inspector General, where now we have community policing and Nyumba Kumi integrated into one.
Okay.
Into one under the same ministry, but led by the Inspector General, where you have National Government Administration at the police station, for example. You have a civilian being the chairperson of the community policing unit, deputized by the officer commanding the station. And then you have the ACC, or the former DO, being the organizing secretary, because they coordinate national government functions.
Yeah.
And security is a national government function. So now you have community policing being the overall, but Nyumba Kumi being the miguu, or the feet of community policing. It is the basic unit of community policing. So without Nyumba Kumi, there's no community policing.
Okay.
Because Nyumba Kumi is the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So many neighborhoods come together under one police station and under the community policing committee.
Okay.
So that has been harmonized now. But still, there's no budget for it.
The reason I'm heading that direction is because, yes, we know that there are Nyumba Kumi heads.
Yeah.
Go in any part of the country, you'll be told, this is the Mzee of Nyumba Kumi. Yeah. And it's clear.
Over 300,000 units.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then also, you'll hear that there's a chief. And this is the chief. Previously, the chief used to command his own police under the AP.
Yeah.
Now we have all harmonized under one police boss at the local police station. So we have, I'm finding like we have very many people that we report to, and I don't know what the structure is. When people are complaining and they call them Mzee of Nyumba Kumi, who does the Mzee of Nyumba Kumi escalate to? Is it the chief? Is it that community policing chairperson? Is it the OCS? Where do they go?
Now, under the current community policing booklet, the guidelines, the wazee under Nyumba Kumi, or anybody else, is now supposed to be directly linked to the officer commanding the station, the ward commander. Because in 2018, the president issued a new policy guideline on command structure. Before, there was a lot of confusion. You had the administration of police commander at the station level. You had the Kenya Police Service commander at the level. You had DCI commander. But that was harmonized in 2018 September. So now we have one command at each level.
Okay.
So if the Mzee has a case to report, the Mzee can go through the local chief or can go directly to the station. The community policing committee is supposed to be to build trust and confidence that if I report, they won't tell on me,
Sure.
and action will be taken. Because if I am For example, I am a member of a committee of Nyumba Kumi in my neighborhood. Okay, but that is under the community policing committee in the local police station, so that my assistant chief convenes our small committee comprised of about 5 clusters. And if there's information we give to the assistant chief, who goes directly to the OCS, to the commander of the station, to give these reports. For example, we've had a case earlier this year where there were pickpocketing around the street where I reside, and we did pass the information over to the assistant chief, who went to the OCS to request. The request we made was increase patrols, and the patrols were increased, and we saw a change.
So you're saying
that's the way it's supposed to work.
So you're saying that this can it can actually work, and so we have cooperation between communities and police. Do you think, I mean, in the cases that we've seen, in this really tragic issue that we saw over the last, couple of weeks, where these 2 boys, who in my opinion needn't have died, and they did. We've not been given reasons or explanations as to what happened in that situation. We actually did try to reach out to Internal Affairs, and they told us that as the investigations are going on, hand in hand with IPOA and such, then they will be able to give a report to the public tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, before that happens, there's a lot of speculation, but unfortunately, what we've seen is that there's been a slap on the wrist with the transfer of certain individuals from the police force. Do you think if the cooperation that you've just been speaking about was happening and escalated, that we would have been able to, even in whatever ways, avert the situation, or at least give or have explanations today as to what happened?
I can give maybe 3 levels of response to your question. One is in the first instance, we shouldn't be having anybody dying from police action, especially if it's related to COVID-19. The fact that I'm outside my house, outside curfew hours, should not lead to automatic death like we are seeing. We have documented too many cases since March last year of people being killed by the police because of violating curfew regulations. We should actually be very ashamed as a country that by taking action to prevent deaths, we are actually killing each other. It's a contradiction in terms. Remember, this is a health pandemic. We are not addressing terrorism here. We are not addressing armed criminal activity. And therefore, the measures that we put in place should be commensurate to the crime, if there's any crime committed in that particular case. And so the 2 boys who died in Embu, and many others that we have documented, some we have already gone to court to seek damages for that, should not have happened. So that is the first instance. Number 2, through community policing. You know what community policing is supposed to do? Is to educate citizens on the need to take responsibility for their own actions, and to be prepared to face the consequences of their own actions. So it is to enhance, as we say, the police are the people, and the people are the police. The only difference is that the police are employed, they have a pay slip, and they're in uniform. All of us have a responsibility in policing, and that's the principle of community policing. So we would avoid a lot of violence, a lot of abuse by the police, or even the police suffering violence from citizens, if we embraced community policing and funded it as the key driver of transforming the force into a service.
You speaking from this position, and I'm going to ask a question that may sound quite silly, but those who were in this same position as civil society groups and others who've said, okay, community policing, constitutionally embedded, did they realize that funding needs to happen? Did they realize a little bit more attention needs to then be paid to this structure? Do they know this?
Remember what we did in 2010. We set up constitutional principles on transforming our force into a service. But we didn't stop there. We went ahead and gave ourselves a new law to guide the implementation of those constitutional principles.
Yep.
We gave ourselves the National Police Service Act 2011. In that act, if you go to section 41, you realize that we actually established a counter policing authority to bring together all actors to guide safety and security issues, not as the command structure, because the command is with the police. We also, under section 96 to 100 of the National Police Service, clearly stipulated how to establish community policing committees and how to fund them. It is there in the Police Service Act that those structures must be funded for them to function. So it's clear. There's no confusion. There's no ambiguity about it. That the transformation of the National Police Service was supposed to be adequately funded, including community policing. However, we have a problem. And before I go to the problem, I would like to just mention, because it's good to acknowledge, where things have gone well. We have partnered with the National Police Service under the Office of the Inspector General and the Directorate of Police Reforms to establish 13 community policing committees or structures in 4 counties. And we have continued to monitor these 13 police stations during COVID-19. And not a single one of them have we received a case of police violence in implementing COVID-19. We've seen a good number of the committees working closely with the uniformed officers and with the national government administration to encourage the people to adhere to the regulations on COVID-19 for their own benefit. Not because the police have said so, not because the police have come to them with guns or batons or tear gas. It's because they find a benefit in adhering to those regulations for their own health and therefore for their own safety.
So when implemented, it works.
It works beautifully. I'll tell you, and that is the future of the National Police Service. However, some of these efforts, even in other police stations, where officers have, out of their own initiative, established these structures, there's a problem, and the problem is the criminality within the National Police Service.
Criminality within the National Police Service.
Every time we move 2 steps forward, we move maybe 5 steps backward because of the criminality within the system, and the fact that there's no political will to deal with the criminality within the National Police Service.
Peter Kiama is the Executive Director of the Independent Medical Legal Unit. We are talking about police reforms, the wins and gains, and where the problems are, because we still have situations in the country where police are being accused of extrajudicial killings. People are dying in the hands of police. We don't seem to find justice fast enough for those that have died. Why are we where we are? We are talking about police reforms. We're just looking at all manner of mediocrity. So there's mediocrity on the roads. The people who are in charge of Mombasa Road, having seen what happened on Friday and having done nothing, it's happening on Monday morning, and somebody is sitting somewhere sipping tea and mandazi and asking, ati kunaendelea aje huko barabara? And they are employed by the government of Kenya. The dead cannot cry out for justice. It's a duty of the living to do so for them. We are living. We're crying out for justice. The Kanjakama brothers, the Kitengela 4, and very many other people who've died in the hands of security forces, people who are in charge of protecting them, and yet they've died. As we're going to the break, you said our biggest challenge is what you called criminality within the police service. What is that, Peter?
You see, there has been a very contentious issue in this country between government and civil society, including a group that I belong to that has been championing police reforms, a group called the Police Reforms Working Group, of about 19 to 20 organizations that have come together to support the Office of the Inspector General and the Ministry of Interior to ensure that we implement the police reforms that are required under the Constitution and the law. And we've done well so far, But the challenge, so the contention is it a case of a few rogue officers, a few rotten apples, or is it a case of a rotten system? And I'd like to say this. I'd like to go back to the police vetting process that we had initiated earlier in a bid to establish the foundation for policing reform in this country. That particular vetting exercise was supposed to be a transitional measure of cleaning up the National Police Service and establishing mechanisms to turn around the institution. Unfortunately, the first commission, the National Police Service Commission, totally failed this country. It was actually a disgrace. They mismanaged that vetting exercise to a point where the exercise did not bear any fruit, as was expected.
What do you mean did not bear any fruit?
Any fruit?
Kiama, there were police officers who were kicked out of the service. Later they went to court, yes. It was public vetting and there were public reports. What fruits did it not bear?
In a good number of cases, Eric, in majority of cases actually, police officers who were supposed to leave the service were retained. Most of them were retained. It is on record that we actually did not even complete. Majority of the officers were never vetted. Remember that?
Yeah.
We went to a particular point, and the National Police Service Commission at that point abdicated a national duty. They vetted all the way up to, I think, when they reached the traffic department, they chickened out.
It became too hot.
When they saw the rot that was in the service, they chickened out.
What reasons did they give?
They never even did a handing over report that was comprehensive enough to identify for the next lot of commissioners what they were supposed to do. And what has happened to the new lot of commissioners? When we came to the BBI amendments, remember, there were provisions to dilute the powers of the Inspector General and to increase the control of the CS Interior, whoever that can be at any particular time, to have a stranglehold on the National Police Service, something that we had gone to Bomas in 2002 to secure the independence and professionalism of the National Police Service. None other than the chairperson of the National Police Service Commission supported those amendments, which included doing away with the National Police Service Commission.
Why?
And establishing a national security, a national council chaired by the CS Interior that was supposed to take control of the National Police Service.
Why? Why refuse?
Now, why would you, as a commissioner in a constitutional commission, actually preside over your own funeral by supporting a constitutional amendment that does away with a constitutional commission? So you can see the contradictions therein. Now, as this happens, all of us are watching. The rank and file of the police service are watching and asking, so if a commission that is supposed to help us to professionalize our service is actually saying, you can do away with us, we are not needed. Those are commissioners saying that. It was quite embarrassing, it's on the record. So I'm not, bad-mouthing anybody here. Now, the criminality that is in, so there has been those contentions. So the criminality that I'm talking about here is this, that it's not a case of a few rotten apples. It is a case, as somebody said last week, of a rogue system. Why do I say so? I say so because, as you all know, and every Kenyan who is listening to me this morning and needs to listen very, very keenly here, we encounter good cops every day. That's a given.
Yep.
And I know very professional constables and inspectors and sergeants and senior commanders. Very professional, very dedicated. But because the system allows a good number of them to get involve themselves in criminal activities, that is scaring away the good ones that are there, and they are there. So the system allows the development and the existence of criminal elements within the National Police Service. Now, when you see Kejokoma in Embu and two young men lose their lives, and then people demonstrate, and another one is killed, and two are recovering in hospital with serious gunshot injuries, that is not an isolated case. I'll give you another example. In around May, April this year, a police officer goes in one of the localities in Kajiado, kidnaps 3 young men, bludgeoned them sort of to death. The intention was to kill them. 2 survive, 1 dies. Right? You go to the operations going on in the North Rift, in Kapedo and other places. You have an operation that is declared an operation zone, so nobody can go in. Eric Creative cannot go in. No media can go in. No vehicles are moving in or out. So it is under total control of the security agencies. 2 vehicles drive in, pick 6, 7 Kenyans, drive them away into the bush, broad daylight, torture them, then each 1 bullet to the head, dead. And nobody has answered for that in a security operation zone that nobody else can operate except those in charge of that security operation zone. Up to today, that matter has not been investigated. The families have been scared to death. They can't even come forward to any NGO or anybody to report for proper investigations. Those who try to assist, a good number of them, their bodies are found in the forest, different forests, many kilometers away. 2 bodies over 100 kilometers away. Now, what are you telling me? If that is not criminality, if that is not a rogue system.
It's a system that is basically allowing these things to happen.
In the last 6 months.
Allowing the criminalities to happen. Yeah. I want to put it back now, Kiama, because all these things that you're saying sound like the things that were happening before the 2010 Constitution. Organizations such as yourself, IMLU and others, and other human rights organizations contributed a lot in the conversations towards the amendment, the writing of the new constitution and the setting up of these structures. So we have the National Police Service Commission, we have the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, we have others, we have human rights and a whole chapter on the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And then just 2-3 years down after the implementation of the Constitution, we still have a system that has not moved, police reforms that are not moving. Where is the problem? The system, we cannot blame the system. The system was rotten, and that's why you are overhauling the system with the Constitution. But if you've not been able to implement those reforms, what's the problem? Is the problem those organizations that were supposed to be doing the oversight? Is the problem the national government? Is the problem the civil society as well, who sort of looked the other way?
Now, I don't know everything, but I'll tell you where I think the problem is. The problem is the command structure. The commanders are not doing, the police commanders are not doing their job. In the case of Kenjokoma or Embu, with the 2 young men, because it's the most recent and the most gruesome, incident. The 2 boys disappear. The parents go looking for them. They go to the police station. The police station says We don't know. Okay? They go again. We don't know. Yet it was already known what had happened.
Yep.
All right? It took the Deputy Inspector General of Police to go to Embu for the people to calm down and for dialogue to happen. Why should we expect the Deputy Inspector General of Police to drive all the way to Embu, 2.5 to 3 hours, to deal with an incident like that, when we have commanders from the region
Yep.
to the county, to the sub-county, to the police station?
So, Kiama, before you go on, this is after the fact, however, right? So at that point, when you're talking about a broken or a rotten system and not particular rogue officers who are dealing with this, at that point, when these two boys were in the pickup or whatever happened, at that point where somebody, because now we are hearing from that there was, blunt force trauma and all of this.
Yeah.
By the time somebody is taking an object to somebody's head and basically taking their life, at that point, when said police officer allegedly is doing this, in that moment, is it an issue of a broken system, or is it somebody who is taking the law into their own hands, knowing or working on the assumption that nothing will happen to them, that they can do whatever they want?
It's a broken system. It's the ethos of the system. It is the practices of the system. If today, and things happen in this country,
Yeah.
if today the two of you knew that the system here at SpiceFM or KTN allows you to ask me for a bribe for me to appear on this show, you'll definitely ask me for a bribe for me to appear. And only those who pay will appear on this show. But because your ethos are different and are clearly communicated by those in charge, and you have embraced them as employees of this company, and the management, has drawn a line on the ground on the principles and guidelines, then you'll be very, very careful. Very, very careful. And I'm saying this because I have experienced in my working life people asking me in the systems I operate in, before I sign this contract you are giving me, I want to know what you expect. All right?
Yep.
Because in many systems, things have gone wrong.
That's how it works.
Because in my system, and my board knows and has clearly communicated, there's no space for that kind of discussion. It's very clear to me there's no ambiguity. This morning, I drove here early morning. On the road from my place to here, there were cops collecting money from vehicles in the morning. Okay?
Yep.
And there are quite a number of senior officers who live in the neighborhood where I live in. And they drive that road every day, evening and morning, going to work.
Right.
Don't they see those cops collecting money? Don't they know those cops collect money?
So it's
That's
a system
the
that
system that you are dealing with.
allows this
The
to happen.
system allows this to happen, and the buck stops with the commanders at all levels, from national level all the way to the station.
But also, there was an issue of reforming the system. And I want to head back there. Because the whole idea of changing this, of even putting it in the constitution and saying we want to sort of create some independence in the structure and management and governance of the police, is so that we can reform that. It's because we knew that this is the problem. Why is it not working? I have to keep going back there. Because unless we go back and find out, why is it previously we didn't have a police service commission, now we do.
Yeah.
Previously we didn't have IPOA, now we do. Previously we didn't have, a civil society that was so focused on police reforms that was even being supported by law, because now there's a law that talks about police reforms. There are regulations that have been published by the police. With all those things in place, why can't it work?
We need to see head roll in a big time. And I'm saying this because we are going to the elections. And I don't think Kenyans will feel safe, including myself, going to the elections with the kind of policing practice we are seeing now. There must be a big radical change before we go to the elections. Because how would you be safe with officers who arrest you and then a few minutes you're dead? What happens especially to those who are not supporting the incumbency? What will happen to them? 2013 we counted dead bodies. 2017 we counted dead bodies. 2008 we counted dead bodies from the police. So do we expect a different experience? Kenyans are asking for a different experience as we go to the elections. What is going wrong is that we are not getting heads rolling where they should roll, or the heads that are supposed to roll are not rolling. We need to see that.
So of whom are we supposed to demand this?
Yes.
Of whom are we supposed to demand
the commanders.
this? Because what are we hearing is that, for even with this case, the Embu case, is that, the slap on the wrist action that we heard was that, a couple of them were transferred to another area. All right. Of whom are we supposed to say, look here, a transfer doesn't work? These are lives of, potential. I mean, look at the potential in these two young boys, right? They just opened a butchery. They started a business which was going to help the community, which is going to help themselves. Yeah. Potential snuffed out. Yeah. Of whom do we demand and say, look, a lot more than a transfer needs to take place for the families, for the friends, for the community at large to experience justice?
What we've done is we need to deal with the blue code of silence within the National Police Service. There are commanders across the country who cannot take action against some of these guys because they fear them.
They're juniors.
Yeah, I came across a case in Nairobi. Somebody I know had made a complaint against the deputy OCS. Mm-hmm. And the OCS was telling this person I know, you know what, I cannot take action against this guy. How can you help me? And I had to refer them to another higher level for them to see if they could get support. Now, you cannot operate in that kind of situation and expect to be safe and secure, regardless of who you are in this society. And we have seen it's not only the poor who are suffering.
Yep.
No. It's all of us are at risk. So in terms of then responsibility, the National Police Service has a very good procedure. It's a command structure. It's a command structure. So it's command and control. So it has a very good... The National Police Service has even a unit that audits police operations. For example, when the people of Kejokoma rose up, and I appreciate their effort, because if it were not for their effort, maybe we may not have seen any investigations started. So I don't agree with the violence, but I think people have to rise up. It's the high time that people have to rise up and say, no, we want a police station that looks like this. We want police officers in our station who respect the law and the Constitution. In that particular situation, when the people rose up against that violence and they were shot, live bullets, one died, two seriously injured, the police are supposed to, the commander at the police station, if a situation like this arises, is supposed to prepare an operation order to say, this is the threat we are facing, not as police, but as a community.
Yeah. That
this demonstration might, end up endangering people's lives or, all our own lives. So the first point of call is the commander to prepare the operation order. That operation order is not supposed to be against the people. It's not supposed to be a punitive operation order. Now, unfortunately, most of those operations are prepared in a manner that is quite punitive. It's supposed to protect the life of the officer and the lives of the people in that particular jurisdiction. And so if you want to know what happened and why somebody died, ask the commanding officer, where is the operation order? Okay, that's the first point to call.
And lack of
police,
it points to...
Police don't just leave the station and run and go to the street.
They have clear instructions.
There's a command. And that's the point I'm making is, the institutions we have, the oversight institutions, have failed to hold, to emphasize and to focus on command responsibility. Yeah. Command, when things go wrong, the commander must answer.
The question that we ask
whether they fired the bullet or not, it is their jurisdiction.
Yes, somebody ought to
answer
to this.
What has happened is that institutions like IPOA have proceeded to follow through with individual criminal responsibility, which is okay. But they have failed to embrace their other power, that is to hold the commanders to account. It is the high time that organizations like IPOA now begin to hold each commander to account, not only for the firing of a gun, but the reporting.
Of everything.
Every incident, according to the law, every incident where the police fire a gun or injure somebody or somebody dies in their hands, they're supposed to report.
Somebody needs to take
In
responsibility.
most cases, they don't report.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.